A ripe peach does not give a household much time. Set one on a warm sill in late July, and by tomorrow the skin may wrinkle around a bruise. By the next day, juice may be running into the plate. A whole basket can move from perfect to troublesome while the kitchen is still busy with corn, cucumbers, and everything else that came ready at once. It is easy to picture the canning jar as the answer to every summer harvest. For many mountain households, another answer was already waiting on a board, a tray, or a scaffold in the sun. They dried the fruit. That sounds simple until you look closely at a peach. It is soft, thick, sugary, and full of water. Leave it whole and it spoils. Cut it unevenly and one piece may turn brittle while another stays damp enough to mold. Let dew settle on nearly dry fruit and some of the day's work has been undone. So the first useful answer is this: they did not keep the peach as a fresh peach. They changed it into another ingredient. Moisture had to leave. The pieces had to dry evenly enough to store. Then, months later, water could go back in and the fruit could return to the table in a pie, a sauce, or a stewed filling. I want to follow one basket through that change. We will choose the fruit, cut 2 different slices, look at the old scaffold, and find out why a dried peach should bend instead of crack. Then we will put the finished pieces in a conditioning jar and bring a handful back with warm water. Along the way, we need to keep 2 kinds of knowledge separate. Historical households use the weather, tools, and methods available to them. Their work belongs to the story. Current extension guidance gives us better control over temperature, airflow, cleanliness, and dryness. That guidance belongs beside the old account, not hidden behind it. The surprise is not that people survived without a jar. It is how much judgment could be packed into one thin slice of fruit. Drying begins with a peach that is worth saving. It should be sound and ripe, not moldy, leaking, or already breaking down. Drying removes moisture. It does not turn spoiled fruit into good fruit. Firm, ripe peaches are easier to handle than fruit collapsing in your hand. They can be washed, peeled if the chosen method calls for it, pitted, and cut into pieces that resemble one another. That last part matters more than it looks. Place one thick wedge beside a thin slice. They may come from the same peach, enter the dryer together, and spend the same hours in warm air. They will not finish together. Moisture has farther to travel from the middle of the thick piece. The thin one can be ready while the thick center still feels wet. When household instructions say to slice fruit evenly, they are not fussing over appearance. They are trying to make the drying pace predictable. Cut a peach open and look at the whole thing first. The skin holds the outside. The pit occupies the center. Juicy flesh fills the space between. Once the pit is removed and the flesh is divided into even slices, much more surface meets the moving air. The path moisture must travel becomes shorter. That is the mechanism. Warm, dry air takes moisture from the exposed surface. Moisture inside the slice moves outward. Airflow carries that moisture away. If the air around the fruit is already damp or hardly moving, drying slows. The color changes too. Cut peaches darken when their flesh meets air. Modern guidance offers pre-treatments that can reduce darkening and help preserve color. Those are quality steps, and the chosen method should come from current tested guidance. We should not confuse a light-colored peach with a safely dried peach. Color can help us judge quality, but it does not tell the whole moisture story. Now put our 2 slices on the tray. The thin slice begins losing water quickly. Its edges soften, then become less juicy. The thick wedge looks fine from above, but stays heavy in the middle. If we judge only by the surface, we can take it away too soon. This is where hands learn to pay attention. Weight changed, texture changed. The fruit stopped feeling fresh and began feeling leathery. Current Oregon State guidance describes peach slices dried at about 140 degrees Fahrenheit until they are pliable and leathery. The exact time is not one number for every kitchen. Thickness, humidity, airflow, equipment, and the fruit itself all matter. The instruction is not to watch the clock alone. It is to know what finished fruit should feel like. Before an electric dehydrator, drying might take place on boards, cloth, trays, racks, or a raised scaffold. An 1839 household instruction associated with lettuce brine describes peaches spread on a scaffold in the sun and protected from dew. A later Appalachian oral history account remembers fruit and beans dried as part of ordinary household work. Those sources do not prove that every family built the same frame or followed one regional formula. They do show that drying was familiar work and that the weather belonged to the method. Picture the scaffold as a whole. It lifts the fruit away from damp ground. The pieces are spread rather than piled. Sun and moving air reach more of the surface. Someone can bring a cover over the fruit or move it when evening damp arrives. Now move closer. Each slice needs room. One piece touching another creates a damp little boundary where air cannot work as freely. A curled edge may dry faster than the center. A shady patch may lag behind the sunny end of the tray. The household had to read the sky and the fruit together. A dry, bright day could move the work forward. High humidity slowed it. A sudden shower could send everybody reaching for trays. Night dew was not a poetic detail. It was moisture returning to food that was supposed to be losing it. Insects and dust were another concern. Historical accounts may mention cloth, smoke, or sulfur treatments used to protect color or fruit. We can describe those practices honestly without turning them into a modern tutorial. I am not recommending that anyone burn sulfur around food at home. Current extension guidance and suitable modern equipment give us safer, more controllable ways to dry fruit. That distinction does not diminish the old work. It shows how difficult the old work was. Imagine trying to finish several trays while the air itself keeps changing. You could not set a timer and forget them. You turned pieces, shifted trays, watched for rain, protected the fruit at night, and checked the thickest slice before calling the batch done. The drying place also shaped the household day. Fruit occupied a sunny surface. Children and animals had to be kept away. Other chores continued. Peaches waiting in the basket kept ripening while the first trays were still out, so batches had to be manageable. The same principle survives in a modern kitchen. Do not cut more fruit than the dryer can hold in one uncrowded layer. Do not stack wet pieces because the garden produced too much for one afternoon. The appliance may be different, but capacity still governs the work. Our thin slice is nearly ready now. The thick wedge is not. If we take both away together, the damp piece can put the whole stored batch at risk. The next step is not the pantry. It is a careful check followed by conditioning. Let the dried peaches cool before judging and packing them. Warm fruit can feel softer than it will after cooling. Warm fruit sealed too soon can also create condensation inside a container. We want the pieces cool enough to tell us the truth. Take one slice in your fingers. A properly dried peach slice should be pliable and leathery rather than wet in the center. It may bend. It should not squeeze out moisture. It does not need to shatter like a cracker. That word leathery is useful because drying fruit is not the same as baking it crisp. Now comes a step many people have never heard named, conditioning. Even when slices look alike, one may hold a little more moisture than another. Conditioning gives that moisture time to equalize through the batch before long storage. Modern extension guidance places the cooled, dried fruit loosely in a clean container and has the household check it during the conditioning period. The pieces are shaken or stirred so they do not remain pressed in one position. If condensation appears, the fruit is not ready for storage and needs more drying. Look at the container as a whole. Then look at the glass. The jar is not doing the original preserving work. The dryer already removed most of the moisture. The closed container is helping us see whether the batch has hidden dampness. That is a much more useful picture than treating the jar as magic. Our thin slices pass the check. The thick wedge leaves a faint dampness against the glass. It goes back to the dryer by itself. We do not punish the finished pieces by drying all of them until they are hard and flavorless. Once properly conditioned, the fruit belongs in clean, dry, moisture-resistant storage protected from heat, light, and dampness according to current guidance. Smaller packages can be useful because opening one does not expose the entire harvest to humid air again and again. Label the package. Write the fruit, the date, and anything you will want to remember about the batch. If one tray was thicker, one pre-treatment worked better, or one dryer shelf ran cooler, those notes can improve the next harvest. Then keep watching the stored fruit. Moisture, mold, insects, or an off condition are not things to explain away. A beautiful color is not permission to ignore spoilage. The old household also had to protect dried fruit from damp air and pests. Containers varied with time, place, and means. Cloth bags, boxes, jars, tins, and other vessels appear in household history. We should not pretend one of them was universal. What mattered was the condition the fruit needed. Dry enough, cool, protected, checked, and still useful when the fresh peach season was gone. A dried peach is not trying to imitate a fresh one. Its flavor is concentrated, its texture is dense, its weight is lower because much of the water has left. That makes it easier to keep and carry, but it also changes how the cook uses it. Take a handful from storage and place it in warm water. At first, the pieces float and feel tough. As they soak and simmer, water moves back into the flesh. The slices soften. Their color deepens in the pot, and the liquid takes on fruit flavor. They will not become orchard fresh peaches again. They become a cooking fruit. That distinction opens the door to dried peach pies, half-moon hand pies, stewed fruit, sauces, and fillings. Foxfire preserves a continuing Appalachian tradition of half-moon pies, and National Park Service material on mountain foodways describes dried fruit returning to winter tables. The pie makes sense because the transformation works twice. In July, moisture leaves the fruit so it can wait. Later, the cook adds water and heat until the fruit becomes soft enough for a filling. Sugar and seasoning depend on the chosen recipe and the fruit. The important part for our story is that storage did not end the peach's usefulness. It prepared the peach for a different use. This is also why dried fruit should not be dismissed as a poor copy of something canned. Canning, drying, cooking fresh, making preserves, and feeding the family straight from the basket answer different needs. A household might use more than one method during the same harvest. The best peaches might go to the table. Sound, firm fruit could be dried. Other fruit might enter a tested preserve or canning recipe. Spoiled fruit did not deserve a second chance simply because waste felt painful. Preservation was a set of decisions, not one heroic batch. Our basket has now divided into several futures. Some peaches were eaten while juice still ran down the wrist. Some became even slices. Those slices lost moisture, cooled, conditioned, and went into dry storage. A winter handful came back through warm water in a simmering pot. The process is visible from beginning to end. Fresh, whole fruit, even slices, moving warm air, pliable dried pieces, a clear conditioning jar, rehydrated filling. No generic card can explain that as well as the fruit itself. If you dry peaches today, use current extension directions for preparation, temperature, dryness, conditioning, storage, and later use. Historical scaffolds help us understand the work. They are not a substitute for modern tested guidance. The old method gives us the question. Current knowledge helps us answer it with better control. There is a photograph people often carry in their minds. A porch in late light, peach slices arranged in rows, someone checking the sky before supper. It feels quiet when we see it from a distance. The work itself was not quiet. Fruit kept ripening, weather shifted, trays needed space, damp pieces had to be found. The household had to decide what could be finished before the basket softened. That is the part worth remembering. People did not preserve peaches by ignoring change. They used change. They opened the fruit, shortened the path moisture had to travel, gave the slices air, and learned the feel of a finished piece. Later, they added water back and turned that stored fruit into something warm. The jar was useful, but it was not always the first answer. Sometimes the most important preserving tool was a thin, even slice. What did your household make with dried peaches? Was it a fried pie, a deep dish pie, stewed fruit, or something else? Tell me the dish and the place you remember it from. Please leave untested preservation directions out of the comments so the memories can be shared without turning them into unsafe instructions. Next time, we are going to hang a blackberry-stained cloth bag over a bowl and ask why a busy cook would let it drip instead of squeezing every last bit of juice through. The answer is not that the bag made the berries safe. It is that patience protected what the jelly was supposed to become. Until then, cut the pieces evenly, keep an eye on the weather, and take good care of yourself.